Welcome back to Dan's on Fandoms. I'm Dan. The latest issue in the Rise of Kylo Ren series was released on January 8th, and it's a solid continuation from where we left off in issue 1. Picking right up where issue 1 left off at, we're once again at Snoke's vivarium of sorts in the unknown regions. Snoke shares with Ben his fondness for the vivarium and its creators, which built it in an attempt to push back the dark side and to create an oasis of light side energy. But their supposed denial of the dark side eventually led to their downfall, according to Snoke. Snoke then returns to where they left off in the previous issue and mentions the Knights of Ren, to which Ben states that he believes he can actually learn from them. Snoke agrees with Ben, telling Ben that there's only so much that he could teach him and that he needn't deny himself in the ways that Luke Skywalker required. However, Snoke tells Ben that the Knights of Ren might not be interested in Ben Solo, Jedi Knight-to-be, so Ben states that he hates that name because of the fact that he was named after the legendary Jedi Obi-Wan Kenobi, of whom he's never met, and whom he feels that he actually has to live up to. He goes on to even add that Han Solo's last name is nothing but a made-up name, and that Han Solo himself is nothing but a lie. They're then interrupted by a droid telling Snoke he has an incoming transmission from General Hux, but not that General Hux, his father actually, Brendol Hux, who is one of the multiple Imperial officers that escaped into the unknown regions following the Empire's final defeat at the Battle of Jakku. Ben asks Snoke who General Hux is, to which Snoke tells Ben that he's not his only friend, even if Snoke isn't the most sociable person in the galaxy. Snoke then says to Ben that there must be no more lies between them, and asks Ben what his true name really is, as the Knights of Ren will want him to adopt his true name if he plans to join them and continue down the path of the dark side. Snoke declares that he was not born as Snoke, rather that he became Snoke. Snoke then asks Ben who will he become? But before Ben can answer, Snoke already knows what Ben will say, as Snoke can read Ben's mind and tells Ben that he thinks it's a very good name. Ben, however, feels very self-conscious about the name that he has in mind, telling Snoke that it was a name he thought of when he was a young child. But Snoke tells Ben this is exactly why that name is correct, telling Ben that a child's thoughts are pure, that they do not practice self-deception, and that they simply are who they are. Snoke continues to explain to Ben that when he called himself that name, it represented what he wanted to do at a deeper level, that he saw the truth, and that he wanted to cut away that part of himself that was Ben Solo. Snoke then states that maybe someday Ben will do this, and that the galaxy will hear the name and see him. From there, Snoke continues to tell Ben that the Knights of Ren could be his first step down this dark path, since they are always seeking powerful individuals to join their ranks. Snoke does warn Ben, however, that the price to join their ranks is quite steep, to which Ben proclaims that he does not care and wants to know where he can find the Knights of Ren. Snoke tells Ben that it will be his task to locate the Knights of Ren, that he must think about everything that he knows about the Knights of Ren, and to begin where Ben first met them. Snoke does give Ben a word of caution, telling him that once he finds the Knights of Ren, he must not fail. He will either join them or die. I have very much enjoyed the scenes that we've gotten thus far between Snoke and Ben. I love what we've gotten thus far between these two, because it's clear that Snoke is masterfully manipulating Ben to his will. A quick spoiler for The Rise of Skywalker, but with the revelations that were provided in that movie in regards to Emperor Palpatine, one of the things that I found myself wondering while reading this issue is how much of what we're seeing Snoke say to Ben was at the behest of Emperor Palpatine. Is Snoke acting of his own accord? Or, as Emperor Palpatine has us believe in The Rise of Skywalker, he is doing all of this at the request of Emperor Palpatine. I'm curious to see if that is something that will be explored later in the series, because I think that would be really cool to see. I would love an appearance from Emperor Palpatine at some point in this series. Anyway, back to the comic. We next find ourselves years into the past aboard Luke Skywalker's X-Wing, and see that Luke, Ben, and Loras Santeca are traveling to a Jedi outpost which is very far from the core of the galaxy, on the edges of the Outer Rim to be exact, almost near the unknown regions. Even Luke is surprised that the Jedi had a presence this far from the core, but Loras Santeca assures Luke that the information he's been provided is almost certainly correct, and that they are indeed heading to a Jedi outpost. While Luke and Lore are speaking, we see that Snoke is telepathically reaching out to Ben and asks Ben if all is well, as he senses disquiet in him. Ben tells Snoke that he is currently with Luke and Lore, and that they are currently on another one of Luke Skywalker's missions to find Jedi artifacts. As Ben is speaking to Snoke telepathically, Lore says something rather interesting. He tells Luke that this Jedi outpost is potentially from the High Republic era, which was a time of greatly expanded Jedi activity throughout the galaxy. This comment from Lore may seem insignificant, however, I do think that this is a clue as to the next era that Lucasfilm plans to delve into with their next series of films and possible shows. And this may be planting the seed as to what the mysterious Project Luminous might be exploring. This was actually something that I discussed in my most recent video on what I believe Project Luminous will be, which I'd recommend you check out after this video. So back to the comic, we see that Ben and Snoke continue to converse with one another telepathically. Ben is telling Snoke that the planet he, Luke, and Lore are heading to is called Elphrona, and that Luke will probably just find some old Jedi junk that he'll hoard away in his new Jedi temple and never use. Snoke proclaims that this is what the Jedi have always been good at, that they've long considered themselves masters of the Force in every sense of the word. Ben continues stating that he wished Master Luke would give him more to do, that Master Luke is very strong and he's a great teacher, that he's learned so much from him, but that Luke never wants him to use any of the power that he has. Snoke grabs the opportunity to tell Ben that Luke thinks of him merely as a child, but that someday Luke will learn of Ben's true powers and his capabilities. Again, I love these scenes because we get to see how manipulative Snoke was, and that he had been poisoning Ben's mind for quite some time, as Ben at this point seems to be somewhere between the ages of maybe 10 to 12, so Ben's quite young, and we're really seeing how manipulative Snoke was with him. Luke then goes on to tell Ben that if this outpost is everything that Lore has made it out to be, they may come across some new insights into the Jedi of old, and that they might even come across some interesting weapons, which is something that interests Ben, and then tells Ben that he's glad Ben has joined them on this mission, to which Ben states that he's glad he's come along as well. The trio then arrive on Elphrona and are outside the Jedi outpost, which is built into a rock face that has two large Jedi statues that stand sentry at the entrance of the temple. These statues conjure images of what was depicted in Rogue One, where Jyn Erso, Cassian Andor, and K2SO are flying over Jeddah, and we see the fallen Jedi statue that has been partially buried by sand. We've also seen similar statues depicted in scenes from the comic series Darth Vader, Dark Lord of the Sith, which Charles Soule also wrote, where Jocasta Nu has returned to the Jedi Temple on Coruscant not too long after Order 66 and the Jedi Purge. We also see similar statues in the episode from the Clone Wars animated series called The Gathering, where Ahsoka takes Jedi younglings on a quest to obtain their first Kyber crystals at the Jedi Temple on the planet Ilum. Luke then tells Ben that they must proceed with caution, as there could be unknown dangers that lie ahead, explaining that he previously found a lightsaber in a place similar to this, but then came to learn that it was a trap that nearly killed him. When they enter the building, they quickly realize that it's not a Jedi outpost, but rather a treasure trove of Jedi artifacts and relics, most likely used as a storage facility for the Jedi. Luke tells Ben that they might have found something that surpasses the cache of Jedi artifacts and objects that Jocasta Nu had, and that there may be so much that could be learned from what they've discovered. The cache that Luke is referring to is from Volume 2 of the Darth Vader, Dark Lord of the Sith series that was mentioned earlier that Charles Soule wrote as well. In that story, we learn that Jocasta Nu has survived the Jedi Purge, that she has created a large amount of Jedi holocrons, gathered many Jedi items, and was working on creating a school for Jedi. During the issue, the school was actually blown up and then later scoured by Imperial agents, so I'm not sure if Luke is referring to another cache she might have created, or if he was able to salvage some of the items that were not destroyed in the explosion. Later on in that same issue, we see Jocasta Nu fighting Darth Vader, and she uses a lightsaber-powered blaster, a near-identical blaster that we see Ben has discovered in this storage facility on Elphrona. I love that Soul is dropping these little Easter eggs and callbacks to his previous series. Luke and Ben then feel some kind of cold presence in the Force, which we come to find out is the Knights of Ren, who have come to Elphrona, most likely at the guidance of Snoke and/or Palpatine. Ren tells Luke and company that he and his knights are taking everything one way or another, and it's up to Luke how they'll be taking everything, either the easy way or the hard way. To which Luke tells him he's so wrong, that everything in the outpost belongs to the Jedi, and that he's the last Jedi, so everything belongs to him and eventually Ben. Luke continues on telling them that he'd never allow Ren and his knights to take what's in this facility, as he can sense the dark side in all of them, and that they'll leave with nothing but their lives. Ren announces that he and his knights will take care of them and take what they came for. Ben steps in and tells the Knights of Ren that they're dealing with Master Luke Skywalker, the legend, to which Ren responds that he's Ren and those that are with him are the Knights of Ren and they're legendary. Luke then quickly tells Lore to stay back and for Ben to protect Lore. Ben is shocked and states that it'll be 7 against 1, but Luke tells him he likes those odds. Ren releases his knights on Luke and they all descend upon him. As the fighting commences, Luke dodges a blow from Vickrel as he declares to the knights that the Force is his ally, and then proclaims that it's a powerful ally, as he uses the Force to push Vickrel and Kuruk backwards, smashing Vickrel into a pillar. He proceeds to tell the knights that they're clumsy, untrained, and that they use the dark side like a hammer, all while he evades an incoming slash from Aplek and deflects a blaster bolt from Cardo, which proceeds to hit presumably Trudgeon in the gut. He strikes Ushar in the face with his elbow, stating that the light side is a blade, and slashes Aplek's blade in half while explaining that so is he. As the Knights of Ren lay around Luke's feet, battered and broken, he asks if they've had enough. Ren then chimes in saying it's not over yet, and that the Knights of Ren have the numbers over him, only for Luke to then use the Force and crush all of their weapons. Ren then tells Luke that it's just Ren and his lightsaber now, that the blade wasn't easy to get, and that Luke will have to take it from him if he wants it. But Ren understands Luke's powers and just witnessed his fellow knights getting worked over, so he flips a kill switch on the lightsaber, which will explode the moment it leaves Ren's hand. Luke tells Ren this won't proceed the way Ren expects, so Ren concedes and decides to get himself and his knights out of there before something worse happens to them, stating life's too fun to die. Before they leave, however, he tells Luke that just like Luke could sense the darkness in them, Ren can sense the darkness in Ben. Luke advises them to leave, and before they do, Ren removes his mask and asks Ben if he's sure the life of a Jedi is the life from him, and if Ben is aware that there are other paths to follow. So once Ren takes off his mask, it appears that he's somewhat middle-aged, potentially in his 40s or 50s, which would mean that he most likely lived through the Clone Wars and the Empire, which makes me wonder if Palpatine was aware of him and the Knights of Ren. It's been stated that the Knights of Ren have been around for centuries and were known throughout folklore in the unknown regions. At this time, we can't say if these Knights of Ren are the same Knights of Ren of legend, or if they just appropriated that name. Either way, I hope these are some of the insights that we'll continue to learn as the series progresses. So back to the story, Luke tells Ren that this is his last chance to leave, but before Ren does, he tells Ben that if he ever wants to learn more about the Shadow, he can look up the Knights of Ren, and then Ren tosses his mask to the ground. We then transition back to present-day Ben, and he is returned to Elphrona and sees that Ren's mask is still lying on the ground in this Jedi storage facility. Ben puts on the mask and then hears a voice, which I presume is Ren, although it's not illicitly stated, who says they were wondering if they'd ever hear from Ben again. Ben tells the person on the other end that he needs somewhere to go, and the voice tells Ben to go to a planet in the mid-rim called Varnak. But before Ben can leave, however, Hennix, Ty, and Vo arrive, and that's where the comic ends. I really enjoyed this issue a lot. It was super fun. I love that we're seeing how manipulative Snoke has been and was to Ben, and that Snoke had been slowly but surely chipping away at Ben, planting little seeds of doubt and darkness into Ben's mind that eventually grow into something that sadly was beyond what Ben probably could have imagined. Also, seeing Luke easily handle the Knights of Ren was pretty rad, I gotta say. If this series continues to unfold like it has in these first 2 issues, I'll be very pleased with it, that's for sure. But what did you guys think of this issue? Any takeaways from it that you found interesting? Let me know down in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. Follow Dan's on Fandoms on Twitter, Facebook, Tumblr, and Instagram, all at Dan's on Fandoms. Thanks for watching, guys, and stay nerdy.